In their dizzying dive from the Andes Mountains to the Pacific Ocean, the valleys of northern Chile are home to fragile oases in the heart of an extreme environment. In these high, arid valleys, after the passage of the Spanish conquistadors, who came looking for gold, the first grapevines appeared here almost 5 centuries ago. Since then, the conquest of growing grapes has never ceased. Nestled in the valley's confines, clinging to the steep slopes, the vines are present wherever possible, between sea and mountains, and to the limit of the Atacama Desert. The vines of Chile's northern valleys blossom in air that is among the purest on the planet. Here the nights are exceptionally clear and cloudless throughout the year, unique conditions for grapes, but also for the many observatories on the peaks of this lunar landscape. Chileans have taken full advantage of this remarkable geography. They had to struggle against the extreme temperatures, the dry desert winds, solar radiation, and learn how to play with the altitude and countless microclimates. In less than 2 decades, Chile has become the 5th largest exporter of wine through the development of vast vineyards mainly south of Santiago. But the Chilean vineyards extend all the way to the northern valleys, starting from the coast, climbing up to over 6,000 feet in altitude, where the geographical and climatic conditions are the most extreme. It is here, within the Cordillera and the desert, that the first Chilean vines emerged, following the conquest of the continent and the gold seekers. In these valleys, some winemakers have undertaken atypical approaches, unlike South wine producers. At the end of the Elqui Valley, Juan Luis Huerta makes wines that express the powerful telluric character of the landscape. To achieve this crazy challenge, it meant planting the vine even further, even higher, at over 7,500 feet in altitude. It's like a challenge to the desert and mountains, like a reconquest.
When we venture along this path, we don't think we're going to find vines. One might think we're going towards the mines. We made this path with shovels and pickaxes. It was impossible to get here with a machine. We made this path by hand. It was an enormous job, especially in such a dry area and wild, where water is scarce, and yet we succeeded.
Juan Luis Huerta is driving to the extremity of the Elqui Valley in the Alcoaz domain. Beyond the road, Juan Luis built himself the vineyard's entire irrigation system by diverting waters from the rain torrents. It took him 10 years and planting tests with different grape varieties to see which would adapt best to the terrain's unique conditions. Today, this is Chile's highest vineyard.
It's a reconquest. This land was used by our ancestors. They sowed wheat and alfalfa for animal feed. Then everything was abandoned for a long time. And now we have 5 hectares in a spot that's unique on the planet. And that gives a unique grape, too. In this zone of the Elqui Valley, irradiation is strong. That's why we gave this form to the vine. Look, this pole points exactly towards the summit of the mountain. Like that, during the day, the leaves protect the grapes. And then the sun goes behind the mountains, and the grapes are protected from morning to night. We're in an extreme climate. It's very hot. And then, as soon as the sun sets, it becomes very cold. And the vine and the fruit have become accustomed to this. And even, each grape has adapted because the skin is quite thick compared to the skin of a normal grape. But for us, this is good, because the quality of the skin is essential for making good wine. And I really think that we make good wine. The name we chose for our wines is Rhu, R-H-U, which in the Indians' language means the interface between earth and the heavens. It's a passage between the human and the divine. And this also signifies the wine, because it transports us from one state to another. It therefore has to do with this Rhu.
The name of the wine from the Alcoaz Heights holds the memory of the Diaguita's Indian spirituality. They are native of the region. Yet it was the Jesuits who came with the conquistadors to evangelize the local Indians, who in the middle of the 16th century brought the first vines to produce sacramental wine. At that time, the colonized area was under the authority of the Vice Kingdom of Peru. The presence of gold and agricultural potential rapidly attracted the Spanish colonizers. They enslaved the indigenous Indian populations in the mines and fields. All the haciendas have their own vineyard. In the Elqui Valley, the wine will be supplanted by the Pisco, a strong alcohol produced from the distillation of wine. Pisco was easier to transport, to be distributed particularly to the kingdom's miners. From the port of La Serena, the regional capital founded in 1544, the boats loaded with Pisco and precious metals voyaged throughout the colonies, all the way to the Vice Kingdom of Peru. Still today, the Elqui Valley's vineyards are mostly devoted to Pisco, which became Chile's national drink. Los Nichos, founded in 1868, is the oldest craft Pisco factory still active. Juan Luis ran the factory. Today, he visits his successor and old friend Don Luis, who is carrying on the history and memory of Elqui's Pisco.
Una de las que se afirma aquí en el valle es que es muy antiguo.
One of the theories is that they sent the eau de vie by boat to Port Pisco in Peru. They took the eau de vie and they called it Pisco because it arrived at the port of Pisco.
That's right. That's why we started calling it Pisco. And the controversy was born, arguing if Pisco was Chilean or Peruvian. But it's a common history, because the eau de vie is actually in Peru.
Who does it belong to? I don't know.
Pisco belongs to the ones who drink it. I think wine is being reborn here.
Yes, it's new, because there was no wine coming from this region. There were only sweet wines, and the rest was distilled.
It's here in Monte Grande, at the heart of this cradle of Chilean vineyards, that the secret of the soul of the Elqui Valley may be found. Here in the birthplace of the Chilean poet, Gabriella Mistrale. Juan Luis and his wife Elia often come visit the grave of this great figure of Elqui, winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1945. Her shadow still haunts the valley and the mountains that she introduced to the rest of the world. All the people who come here feel the presence of Gabriella Mistrale. She was born into a humble family in the village. She left the town at a very young age to study, and it shows that a woman of the people can succeed and become a Nobel Prize laureate. It's a source of pride for the valley, for Chile, and for all the modest people who live here. Her poems speak of the mountain, the stones, the rivers, the birds. Stone flesh of our America, cattle call of dappled stones, stone dream that is our dream, stones that the earth shepherds, to rise from the stones, to join together with their souls. In the circle of the valley of Elqui, under the ghostly moon, we don't know if we are men or rocks in ecstasy. The final valley before the Atacama Desert, the Huasco Valley, is home to real treasures. 5 centuries after the conquistadors, gold and copper continue to attract the mining company's desires. At the desert's frontier, the 3 sisters decided to take over the area's first vineyards to make organic wine. The copper in the subsoil has antiseptic properties and naturally protects the wine from fungus and bacteria. The melting snow flooded the river, washed away the bridge, and flooded part of the vineyard. This year, for Sandra, Cecilia, and Lady Perla, the harvest is a challenging feat. Making wine in the desert is something unique. It's a privilege. And especially to be born here, and to have given birth to this vine, to ensure that people who taste the wine experience the flavor of the desert. In general, the desert is inhospitable. It's not a fertile place. But with winemaking, you bring the desert to life. Through a glass of wine, you manage to talk to the desert, to show its beauty. To protect the grapes from the aggressiveness of the sun, the Ramirez sisters use a technique that's rare in northern Chile, vines on pergola. These vines of Musca from Austria or Alexandria are over 50 years old. They are dedicated to pajarete, a sweet wine that has almost disappeared in favor of Pisco and eating grapes, a wine for which the Ramirez sisters found the forgotten Jesuit recipe. This is one of the first winemaking valleys in Chile. Yes, the first Chilean wine exported in 1888 was called Armadita. That's our vineyard. It's the only vine which has 2 denominations of Chilean origin. We make Pisco and sweet wine. This is the only vineyard with the 2 categories, and it's run by women. Yes, we're very proud. This valley is different. We have mountains of colors: yellow, purple, pink, terracotta. The desert talks a lot. The desert is unique. There is magic in this desert. Sandra, Cecilia, and Perla had to learn everything to pursue their winemaking activity. Their mother made wine, but their father made Pisco. He still watches over every step of the winemaking. Linked by an unwavering oath, the 3 sisters never leave one another in all their winemaking activities. When we crush our grapes, it has a very special gold color. For us, wine is a treasure. We must take care of it and develop it. A drink to the harvest. To the harvest! Good health! In the field of Amardita and throughout the Huasco Valley, many stories circulate, fueled by the presence of gold. It is said that under the hill there lies a network of tunnels blocked by an earthquake that house a treasure. Perhaps even wine from the very first owner of this vineyard. We believe that wine is a treasure, and it must be nourished each day. Our job is to protect the water that is so rare in this region, to preserve it from the mining industry. For us, water is the vine, the grapes are wine, and the wine is life. If the Huasco Valley has an immaculate sky all year round, the Limari Valley, closer to the coast, is home to a unique climatic phenomenon, the Camanchaca. The Camanchaca, which in the Aymara Indian language means darkness, is a coastal fog that moves into the valley in the morning from the mouth of the rivers. It forms when cold air from the Pacific Ocean comes in contact with the hot semi-desert lands of the coastal border. Every morning, the desert is veiled by a thick mist. It brings a little freshness and moisture to the arid valley. This mist has created a unique microclimate. Thanks to this, vines have found a home in an unexpected land of extreme dryness. Here, among the cactus, the Tabali domain stretches over several hundred acres. Christian Sepulveda is the young oenologist.
The Camanchaca arrives like this, around 11 or 12. It depends, then withdraws to the sea. Without this protection, the vines would be burned by the sun. But we always feel the Pacific breeze here, reminding us that the sea is very near.
But these vineyards also protect a newly discovered secret, the Enchanted Valley. Here lie traces of the first Mole Indian, about whom very little is known. The remains of a civilization that began in the 3rd century BC, continuing to the 8th century. An ancient civilization that disappeared long before the arrival of the conquistadors and the vines.
In the Enchanted Valley, we find different archaeological remains. Mainly we find petroglyphs. Most of the petroglyphs represent heads wearing headdresses or masks. The vineyard surrounds this site. There's no direct relationship with the wine, except that we're reminded that the Indians were here before us, and we must respect this place. I think it's good to connect the vineyard and the Enchanted Valley with things that were here before us, and give a deeper meaning to this place, not only for our wine here, but around the world, identifying the product with the location. There's been an evolution. We've stopped seeking the wine's identity and singularities in the cellar or in the manufacturing process, even if that must be done. We're looking for the singularity right here in the land, in extreme places, in places that have something to say. I think the new generation of oenologists are going in this direction.
The vineyards of this new world continue to seek their story, one linked with these once inhabited lands. But before the conquistadors' arrival, the Indians did not know about vines. They made their liquor from the fermentation of corn and potatoes. They never adopted the grape. Did they feel that the vine would bring a civilization that was no longer theirs? Deep in the Elqui Valley, Juan Luis meets with Marcelo Ratamal, oenologist for the domain he watches over. In their own way, they're trying to write the future of Chilean vines, while at the same time reviving an ancient history.
All these extreme projects are long-term investments. This is not for us or our children, but for those who come after. The goal I had in mind is accomplished. This place is magical, powerful, brutal, abrupt. And the wines too are abrupt, vertical, with a bright color like this sky. And that's what we're looking for. But our new goal is to conquer this abandoned slope and plant white grape varieties. The grapes will go into jars, into the traditional gvevris we brought back from Georgia.
Nosotros en Chile,
500 years ago in Chile, we kept the wine in jars. The jar resembles the gvevris from Georgia. The difference is that it's flat below, and we place it on the ground. My idea was to make a wine as our ancestors did in Chile. And we had two options. One was to bring jars from southern Chile, but the culture of jars for wine in Chile was all but lost. The other option was the gvevris that come from Georgia. It's the birthplace of wine 6,000 years ago. And it has the particularity of being fairly neutral. Remember, we want to make wine without adding other flavors, neutral and respecting the terroir. That's why we brought the gvevris back here. The only risk I see, which is the same for the vines we planted here, are earthquakes. I do not know how it will work in Chile because the jars are buried. I think it'll happen like in Georgia, because they also have earthquakes.
These high-altitude vineyards, bordering the mountain range and desert, are under the purest skies of the planet, where nothing comes between the vines and the stars. In this high Elqui Valley, at night, Juan Luis and his wife receive their friends for a special evening. This is to observe the stars with a glass of wine or Pisco, as if to celebrate this unique proximity between the earth and the stars, between the wine and the divine.
Here you see Pollux, and here Castor. Here is the head of Pollux, his body, his leg, the other leg, an arm, and the other. You know we have a wine called Gru? The crane is the name of a constellation, but the crane is also a migratory bird, a bird that travels elsewhere. And wine also carries us from one state to another. When we are sad or happy, we drink the wine, and it takes us someplace else.
Deep in these secret valleys, in this land of dreams, closer to the stars, closer to legends and superstitions, an imaginary universe is being reinvented by the wines of Chile's high valleys, the wines of a new world.